The sheep pack follows exactly the same practices and principles as the beef pack, but with one important difference. We're now dealing with 3 spools rather than 1. A lot of what you're about to see is covered in detail in the beef pack section, so if you have any doubts, rewind and have a look. The sheep pack starter kit contains enough material to build a 3-wire, 300-metre temporary fence on average terrain. As with the beef pack, the sheep pack starter kit has a sheep pack kit and a sheep pack fence kit. The fence kit is made up of 2 sheep tread-in kits, which each contain 10 tread-ins with 3 clips per tread-in, and a sheep end assembly tread-in kit, which contains a further 4 standard sheep tread-ins and the parts for 2 sheep end assemblies. We also have 3 spools, each wound with 300 metres of Kiwitech polywire and a spare release hook in each spool. Let's have a look at the sheep pack kit. The rack and its attachments are exactly as for the beef pack, with the addition of a strap to cope with the extra weight of the sheep pack equipment. It attaches onto the centre upright of the rack. The gearbox, chassis and crank are interchangeable with the beef pack. The multi-chuck has now got an extra 2 stations so that we can carry 3 spools. These spools can rotate independently so that we can apply the same drag to each one. Note this indexing ridge, which locates the spools on the correct position on the chuck. The multi-guide is formed to coincide with the multi-chuck, and we have a multi-guide elbow which attaches the multi-guide extension. The aluminium core of the multi-chuck gets a lot more grip on the spindle than the single chuck, so don't whack it on too hard. If you do need to remove it, perhaps if it's worn, you can drive it off using a 10mm steel rod and a hammer, but if it's been put on very firmly and you have trouble getting it off, you can use this 12mm thread in here to help wind it off. We place a rod, a 10mm rod that's been cut off to length inside the middle, wind an M12 bolt in until it comes up firm, and tap it home, wind a bit more and tap it. We'll just make sure that that's still firmly on. The multi-guide goes into the gearbox, aligning the white crosses, and we tap that firmly home. The multi-guide elbow provides a frictional attachment so that we can align the extension in any desired position. There are machining marks on the inside of the elbow which act a little bit like a thread, so when you're attaching, treat it like a bolt or a screw. Push and turn clockwise and you can feel it come up firmly. The extension goes in exactly the same manner. Of course, if you wanted to detach any of these parts, do the opposite, turn anti-clockwise and pull. We'll just screw that back in. The desired position of the extension is forward and down from the main part of the guide. Snap our multi-geared winder to the rack, and there we have our sheep pack. Let's take a look at the tread-ins. The sheep pack tread-ins come with single rather than double wedges. I've already preloaded these bottom 2 clips, and as you can see, I've put the single wedge in from the top. For the top clip, for practical reasons, which you'll see shortly, we align the body between the 2 green marks and put the single wedge in from the bottom. Doing that makes it easier to drive the wedge in, but there's another reason for having that top clip that way round, which we'll see when we come to the section on the power pack. the clips attach very firmly to the shaft. Let's have a look at the end assembly tread-ins. The stay is exactly as for the beef pack, and so is the position of the pedal on the anchor tread-in. This time, however, we've got 3 release hooks, and you can use a standard tread-in as a template to get an idea of where the release hooks should be positioned on the shaft. Note the single wedge clip, which is mounted just below the top release hook, and with the wedge coming in from the bottom. This is so that the stay clip presses up against the fat end of the wedge. Most importantly, note the position of the release hooks relative to the pedal. The pedal is at about 6 o'clock and the release hooks are at 10. This is so that they fit into the rack nicely. So let's load up the rack. Take our steel pin out of there. The first tread-in to go in is our anchor tread-in, and this time we're actually going to put the pedal between these 2 uprights so that the release hooks are well clear of the rack and out of the way of any other tread-ins. Follow that with the other stay tread-in, and from then on we insert the other tread-ins again in a staggered pattern. This time the bottom clip on the tread-in goes either side of the centre upright of the rack. We'll just put a couple more into the back part of the rack, and you soon get the idea. The last tread-ins to go in are your second end assembly tread-ins. This time we'll put the stay in first, and last of all the final anchor tread-in. Now all we need to do is attach our spools, so we'll just lock the clamp on the rack. Now these spools need to be put on in such a way that when the pack is the correct way up, the poly wire is feeding off the top of the spool. So we'll make sure we've got them the right way round and slide them on. Ensure that your adjusting nut on the end of the chuck is fully unwound. We need to locate the spool on the indexing ridge, and the best way to feel for that is to corkscrew the spool on until it's in the right position. And the third one, note that there's about 8mm gap between the spools when they're in the correct position. Now we need to adjust the nut on the chuck until we've got just a little bit of drag on these spools so they don't overrun when we're putting up the fence. It sometimes takes a little bit of time for the forces to equalise in the multi-chuck, and you can help by giving them a little bit of a wobble and pushing from where they're firmest to where they're loosest. So that's looking about right. Hold the pack in the normal manner, supported on your left arm. Attach the strap. Make sure you adjust it so you've got equal amount of weight on your arm and shoulder, and we're ready to go and put up a fence. Okay, we're going to fence in this direction. First step is to take out your end assembly tread-ins, and we're going to take out a standard tread-in as well. Re-engage your rack clamp, and we're going to set the pack down in front of us, right over on its top, with the front of the pack facing back towards the end assembly. Plant your standard tread-in adjacent to the multi-chuck and push one of the lugs into the end so that our pack is nice and secure. We build our end assembly in the normal way. Make sure your release hooks are pointing down the line, raked back a little, allow for the pin off to one side slightly, up and out, and snap onto the left hand side of the anchor tread-in. Now the trick is to keep track of our poly wire, and the rule to remember is that the poly wire on the spool that's furthest away from you in normal operating mode stays furthest away from you. So that's the poly wire on this spool, goes through the outer loop on the main part of the guide and through the outer loop on the extension. poly wire off the middle spool is fairly obvious. And the poly wire off the inner spool goes through the inner loop on the main part of the guide, and we lead it so that when the pack is back upright in the normal manner, the poly wire is leading over the top of the extension. So we head back towards our end assembly. This is the poly wire from the outer spool, which is furthest away from us, stays furthest away from us by going onto the bottom release hook. We wire up the release hooks in the normal manner. Middle spool to the middle release hook. Remember the instruction, 4 on top. I can get it right. There we go. And the poly wire from the inner spool to the top release hook. Right, we're set to go. Take your supporting treading out. Now the pack's quite heavy, so support yourself with your left hand on your knee, grab the pack with your right hand on the chassis and up to the normal carrying position, cradled on your left arm, and attach the strap. Now, choose your target across the other side of the paddock, and just like the dairy pack and beef pack, we're going to go through a drill so that we can clip onto the poly wire without looking. In this case, the drill is to grab the tread in just above the top clip, out of the rack, and make a big swing behind us. And if we exaggerate that, there's very little chance of catching the poly wire on our way back. We bring the tread in up underneath the poly wire, keep your hand close to your body so that the clips get on the right side of the poly wire. Lift the tread in up so the poly wire slides over the shaft, push out in the direction of 2 o'clock, make a clockwise turn to engage the poly wire, anti-clockwise to lock it in, and without changing your grip, plant the tread in. For a reason I'll explain shortly, we're going to plant these first couple of tread ins quite close together, but we'll just go through the drill again. Out, big swing behind, up from underneath, hand close to your body, up, out in the direction of 2 o'clock, turn, turn, and plant. And away we go. Poly wire tension is critical for this operation. We want just enough drag to stop the spools from overrunning. Too much drag and the poly wire won't run freely into the clips. About 4 metres from our target, we need to prepare to unload the spools. First, we've got to get the poly wire out of the guide, and the rule here is around the end and inside the loop. Around the end, inside the loop, and so on. Now we need to make sure that the chuck adjusting nut is fully unwound without going past its stop. We'll just unclip out of the strap. And see how I use my knee to help strip the spools off the chuck. We take out our end assembly tread-ins, build our end assembly in the normal way, up and out, down to the left. Now we run the spools through our fingers to gauge the tension and snap them on to the appropriate release hook. It's the middle one. And finally, the bottom one. There, how's that? Right, let's take the fence down. When you're dealing with 3 spools, it's best to take the spools directly from the release hook to the multi-chuck, so you don't get the order confused. First one snaps on. Now we need to get the poly wire into the guide, and this time the rule is inside the loop, around the end. Second one on. Note that the poly wire has to feed off the top of the spool when the pack is upright in the normal position. And see how I'm steadying the pack with my left foot. Use the corkscrew motion to locate that indexing ridge, and the last poly wire into the guide. Now we need to do up the chuck adjusting nut. Do it up fully so that the spools are locked to the multi-chuck, and just for the last little bit, support the spools with your other hand. Right, we're set to wind, except first we've got to operate the release hooks. It doesn't seem to matter too much which order you do these in, but we do our normal set with your arm out in front and the whiplash action. The middle one, remember to pause for a fraction with your arm extended so you can feel that bounce back off the far end. And away we go. Just wind at a moderate speed. Now, new poly wire has got a residual twist in it. It does mean the ends can tend to twist together, which is why we put those first few or couple of tread-ins in quite close together. Just move the pack from side to side so that the poly wire feeds evenly onto the spools. And if you do get a snag, remember to pull directly on the poly wire. Don't use the crank handle as a winch. So we can lock the spool back in the 10 o'clock position and adjust it for next time. And we'll just tuck the ends of the poly wire down the side of the spools so we don't lose them. Right, back on with the pack. Strap on. End assembly tread-ins. Just remember that the first anchor tread-in goes in with the pedal between the uprights. Stay post. You move down the line collecting the tread-ins, just remembering to stagger the pedals. Well, the rest is pretty obvious, so that's about it for the sheet pack in manual mode.